Congratulations, man. Welcome back. I think every place I've been has had a Bob, but I knew we missed you. Yeah, welcome back, man. Great to have you. Absolutely. James, I did want to say congratulations to you, too. Saw that the other day. Congratulations. Been fun working with you, but you ditched us for the NBA. I understand it. But sure you guys missed us last week. Last Monday I was out and about the country, and it was, I think, a productive work week for us on many different levels. As a program, I thought we got good work on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Had a lot of developmental work, working with our young guys, some kids that have played a little bit for us. Also some freshmen that or some transfers that haven't been able to get in the game yet that we worked with. So I thought that was good, and then they did get a little bit of a jump on Penn State for us on Wednesday and Thursday. From an injury standpoint, BP just starting a quarterback. BP did throw the ball yesterday. I do think that at some point this week we could possibly get his return, but right now going into the work week of a normal game week, he isn't cleared for practice on Tuesday, but do expect that to hopefully change by the end of the weekend. So Art and Ryan Johnson and Matt will take the workload during the course of the week and see where that plays out. As we speak, Jake Hansen is going through some further testing. I think he'll have an announcement here later in the week, but he won't be with us this week as we move forward. And then I know a couple of you asked about Mike Epstein. Mike and I sat down last week. He basically is awaiting a test that will happen at the end of the year to kind of descend. It won't happen before our last regularly scheduled game, so he'll take a look at the things perspective at that time and kind of make a decision about the future. But right now he won't be with us for the rest of this year. Deuce ran a little bit on Saturday, and then Sunday was out there as well. A little bit determines on how he handles today's workload after work on Monday and see where he's at Tuesday heading to practice. And then I do expect Seth to be with us. He was able to go through some stuff at the end of last week. I grabbed him yesterday when we were going out to the field, and I think he really feels he's going to be able to go full go on Tuesday if he handles everything the way it's trending with him. Should have him back with us full go. So that's kind of where we're at from a medical standpoint. A very tremendous challenge this week. Obviously, anytime you're on the road in the Big Ten is a big deal. It's homecoming for Penn State. James done a nice job assembling a roster. Very unique in the fact that when I came here, I didn't expect to see what I saw. I knew I'd see good players, but he's kind of assembled, especially the defense side of the ball, right? Their best guy up front is a transfer. Two safeties that play junior college football. So their roster is made up of a lot of really highly recruited high school players, but also some guys that have added through the transfer portal as well as junior college transfers. Offensively, they obviously have a question at quarterback. I'm sure we're not going to get any answers on that anytime soon, but whoever they have there at quarterback, kind of two different stories, right? A guy that's played a lot of football, does a lot of really good things, has won a lot of games for him, a three-time captain, and then you also have a guy that's or two guys that possibly could play in his absence that have limited work experience. Our running backs are very talented, having a receiver that's probably one of the best in the league, and a very talented offensive line. So tight ends are good as well. So we got a tremendous challenge, but I think our guys are excited to get back out on the field and compete. So with that, open up for questions.
You were there the day you got hired. Were you thinking the coach part of you take over and watch Penn State from football standpoint, or were you thinking we got them a year from now, or was that any of that?
Yeah, a couple different things. First, obviously, we were still in the middle of the whole COVID thing. Didn't know exactly how the schedule was even going to lay out for the year ahead, right? Did jump out to me that my first game at the University of Illinois was on the road at Penn State, and I knew we were playing them on the road again. I'd love to see the computer that figures that out. I think we play them on the road 3 out of 4 years. So that's a very interesting side fact for the trivia buffs in the room. But the schedule is what it is and plays out how it is. I do remember the fight in our guys at that game, right? And it wasn't obviously the outcome they wanted, but I remember when we first got there, we got there a little bit into the first quarter, and it was a good game rolling at that point. It got a little bit lopsided at the end, but just ran out of bodies.
How different is this Penn State team than the one you saw last year?
Than the one I saw last year. Last year I really wasn't looking at Penn State. I get the question, but I was really concentrating on the roster as it lays out. When I was in the league the last time, that was just beginning to transition from obviously Joe Poe's long run and all that came into it. Then Coach O'Brien had come in, and obviously the transition was taking place. So it's a team that's, and by the roster, that's what I was kind of surprised that there was a lot of portal transfers as well as junior college players that were being significantly played, especially on the defense side of the ball.
You mentioned their roster construction coming off of a bye week and doing all the different things good recruiting-wise. When you look at Penn State's roster, obviously it's based in high school recruiting, but how important is it to have JUCO kids, transfers, to be successful in today's world?
That's exactly why I brought it up. Yeah, like I think it's the effects of the portal transfer are probably going to be kind of played out over here over the last the next 2 to 3, 4 years, especially with the COVID adaptations. And this year we just got granted 2 weeks an opportunity to sign 7 more additional players to your 25. So there's a lot of moving parts right now in the NCAA, and there's probably none bigger than the transfer portal in combination with the NIL. And I think that's a huge potential swing factor in a short amount of fashion. I think even last week when we looked at the amount of days for myself that I was going to be out as a head coach, I would say the time was equally split between the potential transfer world and the high school world. We kind of had a beat on what we were doing in state. We're going to continue to add a few guys possibly into the 2022 class, but as you're looking for the immediate effect and the things that we're going to have to do, offensively we lose probably 5 of our 6 top offensive linemen are all 6-year seniors who will be out of the program. Julian Pearl being the only guy that's in that world. Got a number of guys that are in that senior class that has another COVID or has a bonus year to come back if they want. But at certain positions, it's very apparent that we're going to have to acquire a lot of players through the transfer world. I think I have a better grasp, without a doubt, now on my really when I took over the program on December 19th, they had a signing day on that Wednesday where they signed a little over a dozen players that I had never seen or done or been around before. So to have a handle on who those players are now, we've added a couple more since them into that class, either through a blue shirt, a couple additional signings. I think Dwayne Johnson and Josh were the only 2 that we kind of added on signing date. And now we added a couple, obviously, portal transfers after that. To have a better grasp of our roster, where it is right now and where it's going, has been a huge point of emphasis this last week. Knew it was going to be that way. We wanted to get into the season, play these 7 games. I'm in constant meetings all the time with Pat Hamilton and our personnel staff, and kind of adjusting that as it plays out. And then we've had, if you look at the quarterback room in particular, which obviously draws a lot of attention. 2 guys from last spring, Deuce Spann and Isaiah Williams, are probably 2 of our higher regarded wide receivers. And that dramatically changed that room depth chart wise, and also from a skill set. The only thing that we added obviously was Art, and we brought in Ryan Johnson. They already had Samari Collier signed, so that room is considerably different from the day that we walked in, but it's a room that has to obviously change to get where we want to be.
Both of your coordinators said you're the hardest working head coach they've been around recruiting wise. Can you just talk about your philosophy and what the role is for the head coach? Are you a more hands-on guy than some other coaches?
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I just know this, as a head coach, you're only as good as your roster, right? I kind of learned that the first time I went to the Kentucky Derby, right? Nobody was betting on the jockeys. Everybody was betting on the horses, right? So to win the Derby, you got to have the right horse, and I think our players are going to be a reflection of what our program stands for. I stood at the front of the room last year when I took over and said everybody is invited back because of COVID. They gave me the opportunity to do that. But as this roster continues to transition, I've got to make tough decisions. Players have to make decisions. The roster is going to have to change to get to where we want to be to win the championship. So I recognize that probably midway through the spring last year, through the summer, just certain positions haven't maybe played out the way they envisioned them to. In particular, the offensive line, I don't believe we have a player in the 2 deep that they've recruited here over the last 3 years that is really significantly doing anything for us in the playing department. And that's a major concern, right? So that's something that we have to do. Top 2 quarterbacks that have played to this point are both transfers, right? So there hasn't been any development at that position that is significantly playing right now. Isaiah was that guy, but he's obviously playing a wide receiver position in Deuce. So defensively, we knew there was going to be an evolution just kind of on the style of defense that we played. We got to definitely get a lot of bigger bodies, I believe, up front to get what we want to get done to play in this league at a consistent level. So there's things that we're definitely evolving every day. And as a head coach, I think I have to prioritize my recruiting. I was heavily involved in the 15 guys that we have committed to us. Anything I could do every day, just even the last, probably one of the things I've said to a lot of recruits that we've offered here as of late, like, listen, when we talk, people are going to follow. It's just something I've witnessed in my career, and probably the last 3 or 4 guys that we've offered here at the University of Illinois in the high school ranks in the 22 class. Immediately after that, we've probably got anywhere from 3 to 5 additional Big Ten schools have offered, which is part of it. I get it, and I think it's a sign of people have attention of what we're doing.
Junior college a few times. Has that been something you've kind of gotten into on the recruiting trail in your past, or is that just kind of based on where this roster is something you want to get into?
I missed the first part. Would you?
Junior college players.
Just me going there?
Yeah,
At the University of Wisconsin, I believe I had 1 junior college player in my entire career there. It was a pretty good one. But Dan Moore, he was actually an Illinois kid who, if I not remember correctly, I think he went to Eastern Illinois, played and wanted to have an opportunity to play at a high level, so he went to a junior college in Illinois, and we needed a kind of a filler body at that position. When I was at Kansas State, we did a lot of junior college recruiting. When I was in Iowa as an assistant coach, we did a lot of kind of selection, handpicked junior college recruiting. But junior college recruiting usually comes about in 3 ways, right? Usually there's obviously the guys that maybe fail to make an academic requirement, right? The second one usually are guys that are under-recruited, underdeveloped, and overlooked. And then third is just guys that kind of maybe get in an unusual a position change. Maybe they're, a high school tight end that grows into an offensive lineman, or a wide receiver that turns into a tight end. There's usually something that significantly changes in their recruitment that makes that happen. So because of my time in my career, I've developed a lot of contacts in the junior college world. But I think you have to be careful about the problems you uncover, right? Like, I think it's been very clear to me here to the University of Illinois. It's a very high and prestigious academic institution. It's hard to get kids in school as well as maintain them. So we have to make sure that we get a kid that fits the caliber and the dynamic here at the University of Illinois that make them develop during a 2 or 3 year career window. And then just really the addition of the transfer portal. Now you have some guys that are transferring to junior college to try to get an opportunity to get it at a higher level. Also on our radar, just for me personally, in the last week, there were a couple kids that come from a different country because of the success. We have 2 kickers from a foreign country. We have 2 brothers in Chase and Sidney Brown that come from Canada that have opened up an opportunity to recruit players from Canada that I think is very unique, and it's something we have to take advantage of if it can help us.
What does it mean for you guys to finally be able to get out on the road and see people? Like, what's that mean for you guys as a staff?
Well, I think for us as a staff to be 2-5 and to just kind of have a moment to right in the middle of the season have 2 bye weeks. That's why, like next year, even I think recruiting over the next 2 to 3 years is going to be a huge part of this program. And next year to have that bye week opportunity to jump to 2 because we're going to play in week 0 again is huge. So we were out on the road quite a bit, and I know for me personally, a lot of schools I was at, it was the first time that a lot of times a major head coach, a Power 5 head coach, had been through. They'd seen some assistants during bye weeks, but not a Power 5 head coach. I came across that several schools that I was in. But because we were out a little bit I went into school on a Sunday. I was in 4 states on Monday. Thursday, I actually was in one high school, and I was able to go into a home visit of a current player, which was really a huge thing. Got clearance from NCAA as long as I wasn't engaging any prospective student athletes or we could do, and it's important to me, like I've said this, and you guys probably get a feel of who I am. I was able to go see 4 different players and their parents last week on the road, and that was like hugely beneficial for me because now I learn a little bit more about them that I'd never known until I met their parents, right, and or their immediate family. That was huge. But yeah, to get out on the road. And even the coaches kind of talked about having recruits, coaches come into schools again and kind of all different perspectives. Saturday I was at 2 high school games and on the East Coast. I was in a high school on a Saturday morning, the day after a game when the only people in the building were me and a couple coaches. It was just really kind of a cool opportunity. My wife and kids couldn't understand it, but that was definitely part of the job that I think as coaches we love.
Full circle here, back to Penn State. How do you feel like you most, what have you brought most to this program since then? If you go back to the place where you first saw this team last year?
You're talking about our team or their team? Well, you just know them, right? Like when I was in the press box, I was up there with Warren and Kent and Josh and a crew of people that I was just getting to know a little bit as well, right? So I'm around people I didn't know, and then I'm watching a group of players that I'm glued to my roster trying to figure out who's who, and you know, they're at that time they're just names and numbers. I did enjoy the spirit they played with. I told them that on that Sunday, but now those emotions that I feel with them are real, right? Like to see the disappointment in their eyes after some of these tough losses, but also to see the joy in their eyes after a couple of wins makes it just that much more tangible and real. You know, I know as coaches, none of us really get into this profession for the money side of it or the glory side of it. They get in it because we love to affect people's affect people's lives. And now that you know them, and to my point about knowing their families, it just makes it that much more real.
Because you've gone into the game week with Brandon not cleared before, does that, I don't know, make it easier just knowing you have that experience this year where Art took majority snaps and have an idea of what that looks like?
I'm trying to follow you. What do you mean?
Just because when you entered a game week without Brandon available previously already,
Mhm.
does it make it easier this time around as you get back into a game prep situation?
Well, Brandon never played in a game that he wasn't cleared with at the beginning of the week. I don't know if that makes sense, but
When you go into a week without many guys consider your number one quarterback,
Right.
not ready to practice, you've been in that situation
Oh, yeah.
before. Does that make it easier?
well, yeah. So, for instance, Brandon, right? If he isn't cleared for practice, then he can't play, right? I mean, he could get cleared on Friday or Saturday, but to have a quarterback that hasn't repped with your players during the course of the week in the game plan, unless it's forced into an emergency situation, probably isn't hugely beneficial. I do think the last week to see the amount of reps that Art and Ryan got make you feel good about where they're at. Obviously, Art entered the game against Wisconsin after BP got knocked out again. So I think, yeah, I mean, the more comfort level you have with your players, especially at the quarterback position, the better you feel about inserting them into a game as needed.
Are you able to share which players you did home visits with this week? Was that
I'd probably rather not. I told our entire team just because it's really just geographically, right? Yeah, like it first one, easy one, right? I was flying down to the southern area of our country, and a running back that we have signed that I had never been able to be in his hometown. It was on social media. I know you guys saw it, right? So like you. That's the difficult thing. The one thing that I would say, I've kind of said this several times, right? The benefits that I've had is to be experiences I've done in the past. And even when I took over as a head coach of Wisconsin, I had only been the defense coordinator for 2 years. So there were kids in our program who had never been to their homes, never met their parents. So when I took over as a head coach of Wisconsin, even though I was out recruiting a certain area, if I could see a parent of a kid that's on our roster who I had never recruited, I would do that. And then at Arkansas, when I took over there, I took over an entire roster who I'd never been around, and as I began to work my way across the state whenever possible, I would try to meet with a parent or visit with a parent that was someone that I had never been around before, and that's been, I asked Josh for permission to do it kind of when I was out on the road, because sometimes it involves private air travel or doing some things that are a little bit out of the norm, and I know they'd never thought or done that here, but it's something that was very important to me, and it's been a huge benefit to this point.
You pull off the road upset, if you will, over Iowa. Do you hold that up at all to your guys to say, look what can happen here and do at Penn State?
I think it's another great indicator. Purdue's a very good team, right, that we played. I think everybody in our program knows we're going to play Iowa here at the end of the year or a little bit later into the season. I think as a head coach in the Big Ten, you always are making aware of anything that's going on within our conference. We played Nebraska, we played Purdue, we played Maryland, we played Wisconsin. So you always, I think, make note of the programs that you played as well as the ones that are in front of us. I think that's just standard football. And then college football is a very unique game, as we all know, and anything can happen on any given Saturday. I think that's what we bring to light for our coaches big time.
You find this week this past week that there was excitement
when you crossed the country that Illinois is suddenly now an option for these high school coaches and for these players?
I had a feeling that we were going to, be welcomed. I think, like any place that you have been around in the past, like you just have a feel or an understanding of coaches. What's amazing to me is when I go into a school and I might meet someone that I met 20 years ago, or a high school where I met a coach at a clinic 15 years ago, right? Like those things continue to cross your path. And when you're a young coach, you don't know anybody, right? So I think that part is there. But even just partying and getting ingrained in this community, right? I was on the road all week. We snuck in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at practice, and Coach Underwood had a Brad School that I'm sure a lot of you guys know, and Coach Underwood had invited me to that back in July or August, whenever Joey called me and said, hey, would you like to take part in this? And it kind of got off the plane at 5:30 on Saturday, and we're supposed to be there by 6:30, but to be around some of Illinois' greatest supporters. Brad had a good group there that was absolutely unbelievable. Just to be with Brad, I haven't been a lot of time to spend time with him, never met his wife, never met the men's basketball coaching staff, so that was just so it's just another part of getting ingrained in this community that was awesome. And I would say that that's the part that a lot of the bigger time supporters, benefactors to the University of Illinois program were very positive when I came across them on Saturday night, and that was another positive thing, I think, in my understanding of what's going on.
Coach, there's another new. Go ahead.
Are there any special plans for travel to Penn State?
Any special plans? No.
Like one time, I remember coaches waited until a couple hours later before they tried to get out of town.
Yeah, I think what you might be referencing, I remember when we first went to Penn State when I was at the University of Iowa, they had a small runway, so you had to take two planes. And if you did, when you were coming out of Penn State, you had to wait several hours before you could get out because of traffic, if that's what you're saying. We've got the logistics. I know I've had some people reach out to me that are having a tough time trying to find a hotel, in State College. Maybe you guys falling through the same thing. But I have a good buddy that's in the NFL that just contacted me, and we were able to locate a room for him, but nothing really significant in that regards. Yeah, Rob.
New rule since you've been in college of players can play 4 years and then redshirt.
Yep.
Or
Four
games
games.
and then redshirt.
Yep.
So, you have players right now like Kanena, like Tyler Strain who played 3 games. How do you evaluate that with your roster of, do we want a redshirt them or do we need them the rest of the year?
Yeah, so there were some guys that played in the first 3 games that, as you've been able to tell, right, have continued to play throughout. Josh being one of them. I didn't think he was ready in week 1, but I had a feeling he was going to be a guy that played regardless. Dwayne Johnson being another guy. Kreutz has been in there a little bit. Kanena's been in for 3 games. So there's been some guys right on the cusp. We've had Barlev that's been right there about ready to play. Tyler Strain's played a little bit. So the magic number is 4, but I think you got to kind of make that decision in the preparation to get to 4, right? Like you don't want to decide, put them in game 4. I would say during the bye week we've made some roster changes. There will be position changes that you'll see Saturday in the game that I think is just constant maintenance of your depth chart and your roster and make that better. And some of those have been in the freshman class. So that plays into it a little bit. I think the big thing is when you have a player that you feel may have significant ability to play the next year, is just to get them to understand what it means to play college football, how to prepare, get in the game, even though it may not be 30 reps. If they can get in for 10 to 15 and have valuable game preparation, I think there's a huge asset to that. And then, just to be quite honest, at the linebacker position, right? So arguably our best linebacker performance in game 1 was C.J. Hart, who's gone for the year. Jake Hansen, who's obviously out for an extended period of time, has missed several games this year. At that particular position, Tyreek Barnes and Kalen Tolson, right, who didn't even have in the spring, have been forced into starting roles. And the guys behind them are guys that haven't really seen the field, right? So because of the unfortunate injuries that we've had this year and the amount of them, it's put a lot of guys on the field in these reserve roles and also heavily involved in special teams that come into play on that 4-game rule.
So when you get to 8 games and say you have some freshmen who haven't played, they kind of have 4 games where they could play and you
Correct.
realize the redshirt. Do you think you would employ that, or is it?
Again, I totally understand the question, but I don't think, if you're in a game that you are involved and you're trying to win that game to any degree possible, it does factor into it, but you can't say, oh, listen, I want to play Johnny, right? Like, I want to play Peter, I want to play Ricky, right? Like, it's got to be about what gives you the best chance to win, and that's a sight that can get lost as you try to factor it that way. I think you have to be much more proactive in your plan about who's available, how you would use them, and be able to use them in a capacity to help you win games.
Talking a lot about recruiting and visits. Do you remember your first visit to Aaron Henley's house and the interaction?
Yeah,
with his
yeah.
grandmother?
Aaron was a sophomore. I was on Immokalee High School. I couldn't go to his house because at that time he was underclassman. You could only go to practice. Yeah, I remember all of them. I was sitting, walked through the lobby last night, and I saw Alex Collins and Russell Wilson on the sideline, and I thought about my first experience, ever touching those guys live. Saw T.J. Watt and Derek Watt. I remember T.J. Watt being in my basement when J.J. Watt was on an official visit, and his dad said that kid's going to be a pretty good player. I think Dad probably knew a thing. And I remember taking Derek Watt in the middle of fall camp as a linebacker and thought he's a really good player, but we probably should play him at fullback. I think he could affect the game more at fullback position. And 3 games later, he helped us win a Big Ten championship by the way he played. So roster management happened right in the middle of the season in his case. And that's the same exact things we're doing right now. That's the part that probably during the bye week, I was looking at some film of past places I've been. Just, there's certain running backs that we have now that remind me of players I've had in the past. So I pull out film from the past. And I remember in my 3rd year at Arkansas, I was looking at an offensive unit that had 11 players on the field from the widest player on the left to the widest player on the right. 10 of those guys played in the NFL, and it was in our 3rd year. So I know what we're going to be able to do. It's just unfortunate we got to go through some bumps to get there.
You might be able to let us in on what some of those position changes might be, or is that a waste?
No, that's probably a wait to see Saturday.
You had said that you were splitting more time with Art and with Brandon during practice. Will you continue to do that moving forward if Brandon's cleared?
Yeah, but I get the question, but 2 totally different worlds. At that point, both guys were totally healthy, and they both had played quite a bit, and that's kind of why we had decided to give Art more reps. But BP can't get in what he can't get into, right? He can't get into rep on anything that he can't be cleared to play in. So he's not cleared, so it's a moot point.
He is cleared. Will he?
Yeah, I just don't see him getting cleared.
He was the starter. Is that true?
Who's that?
Brandon. You said earlier that Brandon was the starter. Here.
Did I?
Mistaken?
I didn't quite understand it either.
No,
Hearing it.
I didn't say Brandon's a starter.
Okay, I thought you said Brandon was the starting quarterback.
Oh, he was a starting quarterback in the situation that you talked about when I inserted Art, right? That's what you were talking about.
You talked earlier about being able to meet these players' parents in their homes. Have you had an opportunity to do that on Zoom in the past, I guess, 8, 10 months or whatever it is?
Yeah, so when we first got here, I met all the kids that signed in a signing class on their parents through Zoom, as well as our entire roster. So we had I don't know if it was the 2nd or 3rd week of spring ball, we had like a parent-players meeting, had over 100, whatever it was, 150, 160 people on there that were any players from our current roster that did that. And then just slowly during the course of time here, to walk across after the game to see guys. And to that case in point, I didn't know Brandon Peters' parents, right? So I think it was might have been Maryland or Purdue. I'm walking by and they grabbed me. I didn't have any idea who they were, right? So it's been just kind of slow addition through time to get to know these people.
Did you say you don't envision Brandon getting cleared? Is that what you said?
Yeah, let's clear this up, all right?
Yeah,
So, so Brandon Peters has started games here. Art Sikowski has started games here. Brandon Peters is not cleared to start practice tomorrow, Tuesday, and has not practiced with us since the Wisconsin game as an offensive defensive player. Art has and did, RJ as well, and Matt. I can't tell you who's going to start on Saturday because I don't know who's going to be cleared or not cleared. And if BP doesn't practice much during the course of this week, it won't be him starting at quarterback.
Going back to Aaron, how do you think his relationship with like his grandmother and the way he was raised shifting into who he is now, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so Aaron was unique in the fact as I got to know him, right? He was actually he was fairly highly recruited, but to give the whole testament, Aaron was getting recruited. I remember I was a head coach at Wisconsin. We played at another Big Ten school. We beat another Big Ten school where I attended. and I could see him on his official visit, right? And I remember I texted him, and I said, I don't know about those colors you're wearing, right? And he said, well, you should see the shirt I'm wearing underneath. And he shot me a picture of it, right? And that's when I knew I had a pretty good chance to get him. And then I had the brilliant idea, it was like middle of November, December, he said, Coach, I'd really like to play in an all-star game. I'd love to, try to get an all-star game. I said, let me see what I can do. So I got him in an all-star game. And he goes to the all-star game, and he's pretty much perceived as the best player that's there. And after he plays in that game, he gets another couple SEC offers that proceed to one school won a national championship and offered him. And I didn't know where this was going to go, so he basically let it play out with me that he had phoned me one night on the phone, said the school offered him, it's his home state school, and how he'd love to play for his home state. But then he basically said, but Coach, I told him where I'm going to play. I'm playing at the University of Wisconsin. But before that came to full tuition, or full glory, I was in his home visit, and it was Grandma and his pastor. And I was sitting there with Dave Dorn, and we're sitting there in the living room, and we're kind of going back and forth, and I don't know where this is going to go. I felt it was kind of trending our way, but I kind of came across with some strong comments where I basically said, like, the things I think we can provide Aaron are beyond the normal things, right? It's not just about football, it's about life, it's about growing. And his pastor said, Coach, can you leave the house? And I'm kind of looking at Dave Dorn, I'm like, now what are we going to do? So they made us go stand out in a driveway in Immokalee, Florida, and I said, I don't know if we just got him or just lost him. And fortunately, they called us back in 10 minutes later and said that we're committing to the University of Wisconsin at the time. And that just shows you how different those moments are, right? Like, you never really know in recruiting. It's living in that moment. It's about tripping a trigger, having the right decision-making people. And then obviously, as I was around Aaron and know the effect that his grandmother had on raising him and all that he is, but also now I've seen the full glory in him to have his parents get back in his life as they are, and now for him to be getting married here in January and taking that next step in life. And he was a lot cheaper when I gave him a scholarship. Now it costs me several $100,000 a year as a coach, so he's become more expensive, him and Jamel both.
Football obviously being its own entity at this point, how do you approach a kid that might want to try something in the spring, like another sport? Like, hey, Coach, I think I can really help the track program, or I can do this thing with baseball.
Yeah, so one of the first things that jumped out to me is to come here to the University of Illinois and have such a strong presence of all these other sports, right? And the two most common, right, are track and baseball for football players. And that is something I immediately reached out. Coach Hartlib was one of the first people to come in come into the football offices, and one of the first guys that I struck up a relationship with. And he and I have already talked, I would bet you probably half a dozen guys that are interested in football and baseball combinations. It's easy to see the passion that Coach Hartlib and his staff has, as well as the tradition. Also track, we have a current player that I'm sure you guys are well aware that probably will do track here as well. And I just believe this, right? I think a lot of times in life, I think the good Lord gave me 2 daughters, so I don't have to deal with this, right? But like too many times, young men get focused on one sport and become very sport specific, and they don't play the games they love. And what I've always said is, if you give a young man a chance to play a game that he loves in football, but he also happens to love track, he happens to love baseball, sometimes a happy mind and a happy heart lead to even better results. And in track, like when I've been around fast guys, if fast guys are around other fast guys, they tend to get faster. I've seen it happen over and over. So that will be a transition you really haven't seen here before, or haven't seen as of late. That just wasn't something that was permeated in the program that we inherited. So I think for sure, if now I don't want them just going over there and sitting on the bench. If they can help them win and they can be contributing members of a team and help them bring valuable skills to a roster, there's no doubt in my mind I'd like to do it. Yeah. If there is one.
Penn State series is not to get good for Illinois of the years. Does that come up in the week much? Do you not care about this?
It's a great question, Bob. I have always kind of told our players, like, one of their goals reference to being a team in the stadium that week, right? The toughest team in the stadium mentally and physically. So one of the things that we've talked about every game we've played, no team from Illinois past or the team we're playing is present on Saturdays, right? It's about how those 11 match up on that given Saturday on every play, and I'll never vary off of that. I do think there's at times where you want to bring things up, or other times maybe you don't bring them up, depending on the results. But I don't think it's anything too glaring to assume that our players don't know they got a really good football team that we're going to play at their place on Saturday at noon, and for us to be at our best is the only assignment that we really have, right? We'll be at our best and we'll compete and play a 4-quarter game. I think the way we left the field last time should be motivation in itself to play a higher level of football in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams against a Big Ten opponent. Thank you.